I'm beginning the program with the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former Deputy Prime Minister of Israel, Dr. Michael Oren. You can follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren. Ambassador Oren, I think we're about to get into a battle with Iran. I don't care about the talks tomorrow unless they give them the Assad option and Khamenei capitulates, which I don't see happening. That's where I think it's going. What do you think?
I think so too. I think so too. And let me dig down a little bit and just what's happened over the last week, because this week sort of opened with that drone approaching the USS Lincoln and getting shot down, an attempt by Iranian missile boats to try to take over an American tanker, American flag tanker in the Gulf of Hormuz. Why would Iran do this? Big question. Why would Iran try to provoke the United States into launching a war now? And the answer is this. I think the Iranians understand what you understand, Hugh, that these negotiations are going nowhere. That maybe they can concede part of their nuclear program. What is their concede? It's half destroyed, at least already. And then secondly, they're not going to give up their support for terrorist groups. They're not going to give up their missile program. This is in their DNA. This is who they are. And so the question is, when does America strike? And since America is building up its forces very rapidly in the Middle East, now that the H.W. Bush aircraft carrier is en route and approaching the area, the Iranians would rather have the American attack earlier rather than later. And they think they can maybe survive it, and they maybe can cause prohibitive damage to American naval vessels and forces in the Middle East, and force a ceasefire. They are relying on the experience they had last summer when the Iranians fired rather performatively at Qatar. And Trump quickly called for a ceasefire. They're going to make a miscalculation on this, but that's what I'm thinking. To me, there's no other reason why this drone approached the USS Lincoln, why these missile boats try to take an American flag tanker, is to provoke the United States into a military confrontation sooner rather than later.
So, Michael, why would they want to do that? Because we've already got there a lot of force. I assume they will strike at Israel. Israel will join in. It will be an overwhelming punishment that I think will end up with regime decapitation. Do they not believe that?
I think that right now they understand that the United States position, military deployment in the Middle East is not as tight. It's far from it. Right now you have one aircraft carrier there. Best of my knowledge, the aircraft carrier is about 90 planes. Of those, about 70 warplanes. You have other planes stationed in the area. You have bases. But listen, even President Biden on October 8th, 2023, sent two aircraft carriers off the coast of Lebanon, the Ford and the Eisenhower. And that was considered a formidable force, not a force for war, but war for preventing war. And you need a much bigger buildup if you're going to take on a country of 90 million people that is more than the size of France and Germany combined. It is a very huge country, armed with thousands of rockets, many thousands of drones. And then it has positions throughout the Middle East. It has all these proxies. And you know the difficulties that the U.S. Navy had in fighting the Houthis. I have a colleague who is an officer of the U.S. Navy who was involved in that campaign. It told me it was the biggest combat operation that the U.S. Navy has had since World War II. Imagine this, from the Houthis alone, and had a very difficult time because they were firing between 30 and 40 rockets at U.S. naval vessels every day, and they had to do all these evasive maneuvers. In fact, at one point, one of the airplanes off the aircraft carrier went into the ocean because they were moving so fast, trying to swivel to avoid these oncoming rockets. Well, you're going to get that from many different directions, from Iran, from the Syrian and Iraqi Iran-backed militias. They also have rockets. It's going to be a big challenge. The last time we spoke, Hugh, we talked about, I said, remember the Sheffield, right? And the HMS, the British destroyer that was hit by an Exocet missile fired by the Argentinians during the Falkland Wars of 1982. I think we also have to remember the Cole in 2000, the U.S. naval vessel that was hit by a suicide speedboat in Aden Harbor in Yemen in 2000. Iran has many, many of these speedboats. The Houthis are perfectly willing to blow themselves up. They're big on martyrdom. So you're going to have you coming at something like the USS Abraham Lincoln is going to have all these drones, all these rockets, all these missile boats coming at you. It is going to be quite a challenge. So in order to meet that challenge, you have to build up an anti-missile capability, which is unrivaled anywhere in the world. And that takes time. And I think the Iranians understand that, and they don't want to give President Trump that time.
So, Ambassador Orrin, I don't think Trump will go until he has everything there. But as Admiral Montgomery said on this program the day or Friday before the Monday we last talked, no doubt we have one or two um, Ohio class Tomahawk missile carrying submarines. We have all of the Air Force assets that have been moved to the variety of bases. And we have the Israeli Air Force, and we have the first carrier and the second carriers en route. If we cannot decapitate a regime or overwhelm it with force with that, then the United States isn't a superpower. And we don't have to invade. We're not going to invade. If we can't do it, that can't be done. What do you expect Israel to do if we begin that campaign?
Well, before I answer that, let me tell you about whether what America can and cannot do. I think the expectation is not just a hope. The expectation is that once America acts against the regime, that the people will once again rise up, particularly if they see that the regime's hands are tied, that it's on its hind legs, they'll rise up again, and that is where the regime gets its coup de grace, not necessarily from American missiles, but from its own people, as it should be, by the way. And here we get to the reason why 9 Arab and Muslim countries pressured President Trump to go back to the negotiating table, even after the Iranians balked at meeting with the president and other Arab Middle Eastern representatives in Ankara and Istanbul this week. And they moved the talks to Amman. It's interesting, Hugh, that these 9 countries share Israel and America's interest in removing the nuclear threat from Iran, removing the ballistic missile capability from Iran, and stopping Iran's support for terrorist groups throughout the Middle East and the world. We all agree on that. There's one point we are not on the same page, and it's this. These countries want to see a weakened, emasculated Iran. They don't necessarily want the Iranian regime to fall, because if you see a regime falling as a result of a popular uprising, that won't be good for those countries. They aren't democracies, and they don't want that precedent. So they would like to see just Iran, sort of defanged, toothless. But I think the United States and Israel together care about the Iranian people and care about Iran nation, and that sets us apart. Now, as to what Israel will do, Israel will defend itself. Israel has immense capabilities. We're talking about an Air Force. The number of actual airplanes we have is classified, but it is in the hundreds. Plus other capabilities. We also have submarines. We also have a Navy, and I imagine that all of these assets will be brought to bear. We'll also have to spend a tremendous amount of energy on missile defense, because the Iranians have these missiles. They are quite large. I think last time I spoke on the program, I talked about the warheads, which are about 20 times the size of a rocket that Hamas will fire, and that our safe rooms can be of little utility in protecting us in the face of these massive rockets. They can take down a neighborhood. And we're going to have quickly to locate the launchers. The point is, Iran may have 1,500 ballistic missiles left, but it doesn't have 1,500 launchers. And if we can knock out the launchers very, very quickly, those missiles will be useless.
So, Dr. Orrin, I also have a friend in the United States Navy who was deployed in the Gulf during round 1 with the Houthis, and it was an annoyance, but this officer was not worried about attacks on carriers, although I am. And I thought, I've been repeating your warning about the Sheffield ever since you made it to me. It reminded me of 1982. I talked about it with Britt Hume yesterday. I do believe that everything has to go at once in order to decapitate the regime. And I don't think it's a 92 million person regime. I think it's 150,000 members of the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Just finished reading a book on them, Empire of Evil by Mark Zalisky, which came out 4 years ago, but the numbers are probably still the same. They're ideological, they are corrupt, they are completely glued to Khamenei, they can't give up or the people will kill them. So it's 150,000 people. They got another 500,000 people in the Iranian army, but they are not as ideologically fanatical as that. Do you think what John Thune told me yesterday, the objective of this ought to be regime change, not occupation, regime change? We have 1 minute, Dr. Orrin.
Listen, I have to be very cautious here, because we don't have a position. There are people already saying that Israel's pushing America into this war, and it's for Israel's interests. It's all Netanyahu's doing, and I don't want to push anybody into any war. But the question of regime change or not regime change is almost a moot point, Because if the Iranians theoretically were agree to give up their nuclear program, give up their missiles, and stop supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, and Al Quds Force, which operates terror around the world, then it's not the same regime anymore, is it? It's basically a regime change. And since the regime isn't capable of making those changes, what alternative is there? It's kind of a moot point.
I agree, and I also think, agree with Britt Hume yesterday, having built up this kind of force in the Middle East, not to use it would significantly deteriorate America's deterrence. Dr. Oren, we'll talk again next week. I appreciate the special appearance on a Thursday.
Our fencing, we have seen the Iranian leadership wiring money out of the country like crazy. So the rats are leaving the ship, and that is a good sign that they know the end may be near.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on what the Mullahocracy is doing right now. I'm joined by Noah Rothman, senior writer at National Review. Noah, I just talked to Ambassador Oren, who believes the Iranians attempted to bait the United States into striking too soon yesterday or this week with the attack on the Lincoln by the drone and the attempt to seize the oil ship. They took 2 cargo ships today, or 2 freighters today. What do you think? What's your assessment of what's going on over there?
So that was a very interesting interview with Ambassador Oren. I hope your listeners caught it. If they didn't, they should catch up with it. He painted a pretty dire situation, a very dire scenario. And it concerns me. It's the worst case scenario, and we've talked about it previously. The notion that the Iranian military or the IRGC will throw everything they can at U.S. assets, particularly naval assets, but also its bases and its partner bases around the region. And it would be a significant challenge. They would attempt to, in my view, engineer a sinking of a U.S. warship. But that would require a lot of assets. Now, here's the other scenario, that the ambassador did not bring up. It is that situation, that scenario where Iran loses all its munitions, all its ordnance, sacrifices future deterrent capability. This is a regime that is hyper-focused on survival. It has a long time horizon. It is not necessarily going to sacrifice all its missiles, all its drones in a one-off strike, because it won't have them to deter future aggression against future adversaries. We can anticipate that a U.S. operation will begin with, as Ambassador Oren said, the striking of missile launch facilities and production facilities. So Iran can be certain that its capabilities will be damaged for the foreseeable future. It will take a long time to spin up those production facilities. So what it's got is what it's got. And if it uses them, it won't have them in the future. A deterrent capability is something this regime would like to preserve. So we can't rule out the prospect of a calibrated response akin to what it marshaled after the operation that destroyed its nuclear facilities in June.
You know, Noah, the Iranians demonstrated in 2020 when President Trump ordered Soleimani to be killed that they can hit a United States base. They hit al-Assad with an array of ballistic missiles. And so if there's a GPS attached, we know they can hit it because they hit al-Assad. They injured a few American soldiers that were left on the base, but we had warning of it and we evacuated beforehand. What would be the response if they actually did a serious casualty figure on America, much less taking out a carrier, which is 5,000 people, which is the nightmare scenario? What do you think the response from America would be?
Well, the nightmare scenario that you just discussed would require a very significant response, a response that would involve bases in the United States sending B-2s with MOPS and 5,000-pound bombs to attack regime targets, to attack military targets, as well as IRGC targets. We would make an example of the Iranian nation. That is not because we would want to communicate to our adversaries in Beijing and Moscow what happens if you attack a carrier, not because of Iran. That is the worst case scenario. That's almost inconceivably bad for American prestige and American deterrent capabilities. But a smaller response is possible to think about, and the notion that the United States will not experience casualties or fatalities in that response is not something you can rule out. And how would the Trump administration respond? I think that depends on how the American public responds. Would the American public regard this as an operation of choice, not of military necessity, and therefore something we invited on ourselves? Or do they think it's an absolute imperative to get rid of this regime by whatever means are necessary, and whatever comes after it is a good problem to have? I hope the American public would respond with the latter assumption, but the president needs to make this case to the nation. The president needs to enlist the public in this project because it is a national project, and the sooner he comes before the public and says why we're doing this, the better.
I agree with that, by the way, because the first part of that case is to announce how many people we think they murdered. I think it's over 30,000. That hasn't sunk in, Noah. And I don't know that the American people have their arms around that yet, that this regime is capable of murdering 30,000 or more of its own citizens in 48 hours. And that therefore, if they ever got a nuclear weapon or a ICBM that could hit the United States with a dirty bomb or whatever, they would do it. There's just nothing they wouldn't do.
Absolutely. And that is so crucial to say, the scale of the bloodshed, because it communicates to the public how this regime views its own survival. It compelled its own security forces to sign their death warrants with the execution of their neighbors in the streets in January. This regime regards survival, its own survival, their personal survival, as an imperative, and nothing else compares, including the survival of the citizens to which it is ostensibly dedicated. There's nothing that it wouldn't do in order to preserve its own stability, its own existence. And that does mean attacking the United States with whatever weapons it has available, attacking the United States on its own soil, engineering assassination campaigns on American soil, killing Americans by scores. That is what this regime does, and it will not shy away from doing that. And if it has no legitimacy at home, it has no mechanism to rein it in. There's no domestic trigger that the Iranian people can pull to impose some circumspection on this regime. It is moderated and guided purely by the Islamic Republic's supreme leader's own sense of morality. And we've not seen very much of that. It is really a force that is untethered to anything beyond what this very cloistered group of clerics is telling themselves. It's a very dangerous regime.
It's a 12th Imam end times regime, and I would encourage anyone to read deep on this. Noah, you did post on your X account a picture of our base in Qatar that shows the deployment of Patriot missiles over the last 3 weeks. I think that explains why President Trump hasn't moved yet. And the dispatch of the George H.W. Bush carrier tells me the same, that tomorrow's meeting may or may not produce a second meeting, but I don't think it matters in the end. Do you share my fatalism about this?
Oh, I do. Yeah, we gave a little bit, and I kind of wish we hadn't, but I understand why. The idea being to keep the Arab states on board with the diplomatic track, but we're too far apart. We are talking about the nuclear program, which is under several tons of lightly irradiated rubble. It's not really worth talking about. But we are also talking about the ballistic missile program and their proxy terrorist groups. The problem is that we want those things to go away forever, and the regime wants them to exist forever because they regard them as essential to their own survival. So we're just too far apart to meet in the middle. But Ambassador Oren's point is extremely important, that the Arab states are not democracies. They do not necessarily want to see this regime fall from popular pressure. This is not like the Arab Spring. We're talking about some conditions that are sui generis, very unique to Iran. So they have a little bit less to be worried about in Riyadh, although they should be worried about their own people. But it is important for us to be able to communicate and convey that what we want to see happen to the Islamic Republic is an implosion, not an explosion. And that will require sustained U.S. power and presence in the region for the foreseeable future, and a soft landing space for this regime, elements of it that are willing to either exile themselves or to work with a successor government, because we do not want to see the collapse of this regime into civil war and chaos and disunion, because our partners abroad do not want to see that. That might be distasteful, but it's realpolitik that we will have to consider.
Well said, as always, Noah C. Rothman. Follow him on X from National Review, Noah C. Rothman. It's beautiful in California. I'm here for a couple of months. But I'm going back to D.C. next week, to the Beltway. And people, are you out of your mind? It was 90 degrees in Southern California yesterday. It's not that way today. It's Santa Ana's have died down, so it's only beautiful. But in D.C., in the Beltway, it's as cold as it's ever been. I mean, it's been frigid. And people are, what are you, nuts? Well, I'm going back because Americans for Prosperity, a great sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show for many years, is kicking off their celebration of our 250th birthday. And the website is a250toolkit.com. The letter A, capital A, 250toolkit.com. A250toolkit.com. And it's where Americans are gathering to share their stories about the American dream, how they've lived it. I'm going back to participate in the opening dinner for that because AFP is just fabulous, and we're going to have a great dinner on Tuesday night, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going to stay the rest of the week because you can't travel in the middle of the week because of the East Coast to West Coast time change. Can't make it in time for the program, so I'll just stay there all week and broadcast from the Relief Factor Studio East Beltway. And I'm here to tell you, though, go to the toolkit. Take a look, a250toolkit.com. The letter A, 250toolkit.com, a250toolkit.com. It's not hard to remember, but you want to go there and learn more about the American founding, what drove the founders, and then learn how to share your own story. The American dream isn't a big government program. It's our pursuit of happiness, and how to do that is laid out at a250toolkit.com. While I'm talking about websites, I want to talk about besthotgrill.com. They do indeed make the Solaire infrared grill, the best grill made in America. They do indeed do that. But they also have Rasmussen Chill Buster vent-free gas logs and Alterna vent-free fireballs. They require no electricity, just natural gas or propane, and they will help keep your family warm in a case of a power shortage. Turn your wood-burning fireplace into a source of emergency heat with Rasmussen Chill Buster vent-free gas logs and Alterna vent-free fireballs. But even if it's cold outside, you can keep using your Solaire infrared grill. Solaire infrared burners heat up in just 3 minutes. They perform equally well in the coldest cold of winter as they do in the summer month. They grill your food faster, make it tastier. You ought to try as well the Solaire Demo Rental Grill program so you can try before you buy. It's all over at Solaire, everything that I just said, the Solaire infrared grill, the gas logs, the Rasmussen gas logs and fireballs, all at besthotgrill.com. All right, I want to go to Kamala Harris. The former vice president gave us a little announcement today. So let's play that. That is cut number...
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it. So stay engaged, and I'll see you out there. Thank you.
All right, now, you just heard me do two reads. One was for a250toolkit.com. The other was for best.grills.com. How many times did I give you the web address? About 5 for each sponsor, about 5 times. Let's listen to Kamala again below the opening to try and get you reinterested in her political career.
What's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it. So stay engaged, and I'll see you out there. Thank you.
All right, I'm here to tell you that Kamala HQ actually takes me to a recording artist when I go to Kamala HQ. So I'm not really sure where the website is. She didn't tell us. She's relaunched her old HQ account as an online organizing project, and I really don't know how to get to it. So well done, Kamala. You did for online branding what you did for the vice presidency. Absolutely failed to deliver. Absolutely failed to deliver. So what I want you to do is not go to Kamala HQ. I want you to go watch the Salem News Channel, because when I'm done talking to Eliana Johnson, I'm going to tell you about my trundle up the implacable hill this morning when I talk to you about Relief Factor. And I want you watching the Salem News Channel when I do that, because I took some pictures today of the implacable hill because of an unusual trundler, co-trundler. So I want you to watch. You're going to have to see it to enjoy it. Eliana Johnson is the editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon. You can follow her at Eliana Y. Johnson on X, freebeacon.com. She's also almost daily contributor to the Commentary Podcast. Eliana, I haven't listened to the Commentary Podcast from this morning, but yesterday, just the last little bit was devoted to what's going on in Iran. I opened the program with Ambassador Oren today, who says, be very, very, very sure you know what you're getting into because this is going to be very ugly if we get into a shooting match with Iran. What do you think about that?
I think that's right. And I think the president's aware that this is a risky undertaking, which is part of the reason he's taking his time. We did devote quite a bit of time to talking about Iran today and actually had a debate about whether the president wants to engage in diplomacy as an off-ramp and is really reluctant to do something, and whether the Iranians, in harassing the USS Abraham Lincoln with a drone, were trying to, as the ambassador suggested, force the U.S. to act by taunting the president before it's good and ready. So I'm not sure which one of these two avenues. I actually argued the second, that I think the president is reluctant to act, but will end up choosing action because it's the least worst option that he's presented with. But many of my colleagues believed that the Iranian actions in sending a drone over the USS Abraham Lincoln were intended to force U.S. action before they're ready, because they know this is going to be quite messy, as the ambassador suggested.
Well, that's my take, is that President Trump's going to go when he wants to go, and that he's got a big window. He tried to prevent a massacre by posting about it, but he couldn't. And any regime that will kill 30,000 of its own people in 48 hours, we cannot underestimate whatever they're doing. And they're probably lining up their ducks as well. But I've talked to naval officers, and I believe that they are confident in their ability to quickly suppress fire. But that doesn't mean that a ship doesn't get blown up, because the Sheffield in the Falklands was a lucky shot from Argentina with an aging Exocet. We know that the Iranians, when they have a GPS, can hit the GPS. They hit the al-Assad base after Soleimani was killed. What do you think? Do you think Americans are ready for this?
Well, I heard Noah Rothman say that President Trump needs to make the case to the American people. I think that's absolutely true, because I think there are plenty of elements of the president's own base that are skeptical of this. And I think it's worth speaking to them, as well as the Americans who aren't a member of the president's party, and attempting to persuade here about why this is in the American interest. I also think he should speak to the fact that in diplomacy, inaction is action. Hovering in the background of all of this are the degradation of American credibility that Barack Obama achieved by failing to act in Syria in 2013, and that the Biden administration eroded over his 4 years. And I think President Trump knows, as his people prepare to meet in Oman and negotiate with the Iranians, that there's no such thing as real, honest negotiations with these people, and that he does not want. He tore up the first nuclear deal, but that he does not want to be the second coming of Barack Obama. He's worked quite hard to restore American credibility, and that's hovering in the background here. No action is a deliberate choice and an action, and I think he should speak to that.
And no action would be the destruction of the deterrent that he's rebuilt. And it was destroyed by the JCPOA. It was destroyed by the Red Line erasure. It was permanently damaged by Joe Biden's catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. But I also think, even if those had not happened, when a massacre on this scale happens, the United States, it's a non-nuclear power. The United States represents the West. It really can't just not notice it, Eliana. They've killed Americans for 47 years. They cannot not pretend that they're trying to kill us now.
Well, Hugh, the president chose to speak up when Iran was killing its people, which is why I think his credibility is on the line here. When he speaks, if and when he speaks to the American people, I really do think he should speak more to the fact that this is a regime that for the past 50 years, since 1979, how many? Yeah, 50 plus years, for the past half century plus, has devoted itself wholly and entirely to murdering Americans, has American blood on its hands, and that weakening the external threat of Iran, every action we take aimed at its nuclear, ballistic, or its support for its terrorist proxies, itself weakens and degrades the internal standing of the regime, because that is what this regime is.
Now, one thing that has to be done and hasn't been done yet, it was done by President George H.W. Bush before Desert Storm. It was done before George W. Bush ordered the invasion of Afghanistan and then the invasion of Iraq, which was to prepare the Americans for the worst case. I mean, when we went into Iraq the first time in 1991, they were telling us 100,000 Americans could die. The second time, they were also worried about what could happen in Iraq more than Afghanistan. Does anyone have that sense of, my gosh, your stomach is in knots over this? Because mine is.
Well, I think that's what's led to this long pause and deliberation inside the administration. We have pretty good reporting that 3 weeks ago or so, the president was prepared to act and called off an operation. And I think he's grappling with this because all of the operations he's been involved in, the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the Maduro operation, they have not led to the deaths of American servicemen. And the withdrawal from Afghanistan, President Trump has compared the operations he has ordered favorably to the withdrawal from Afghanistan that led to the deaths of 13 American service members. And we know that this president does not want the blood, the bodies of American service members on his hand. And you have to imagine he's wrestling with that quite hard.
I agree, but very quickly, Eliana, Brit Hume on the program yesterday said he can't back down now or his credibility is shot and the American deterrent is shot. I agree with that. Do you?
I think that's a black and white way to put it, but I'm not totally there, but I think it absolutely would degrade the deterrent that he's spent the past year rebuilding from the degradation that took place during the Obama and Biden administrations. It would hurt.
Eliana Y. Johnson on X, editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon, participant in the Commentary podcast. Thank you for joining me as always, Eliana. Great to speak with you. Don't not read the Washington Free Beacon. Go every day. Check out what they put up for you at freebeacon.com. And do not miss one episode of the Commentary podcast, one of the smartest discussions of what's going on in the world anywhere. It's over at Commentary Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. I always take the relief factor in this segment. I'm taking it right now. I went up the Implacable Hill today, and I needed my relief factor because I went longer than normal, and I went faster, a little bit faster than normal, which isn't very fast. But there it is. I carry curcumin, is very to make. I take it every day. And if you're watching, you just saw me do it. But the reason I wanted you to watch the Salem News Channel is I took some pictures on the Implacable Hill today. There it is. If you're watching, it's steep. It's a long climb, 2.5 miles up and down, then back up and down. But as I went up the hill, I saw in the distance, I couldn't believe my eyes, a little tiny robot, R2D40 or something like that. And this is in the middle of nowhere, mind you. There's no delivery service around. They can't be dropping off an Uber. There it is, R2D240. And I was moving faster than that. That's the good news, is that I can go faster than those little robots. But if you go back, show that last picture, Harley. It's in the middle of nowhere, and it's way up high, and it's moving about, if I do 4 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour, it's got to be going about 1.5 miles an hour. That's what it's doing. And I don't even know, it's a very steep hill, and it's chugging along, but it's so slow that I was able to pass it. Normally, ants aren't in danger of me stepping on them because they're faster than I am. But this little guy, God bless him, got to the top of the Implacable Hill, but then I left him in my dust. I rolled past him like he was standing still, which basically he was. And I just could not believe it. I've seen him all over the place, all over Southern California. I can't believe that people aren't vandalizing them. Not that I would ever do that, but I mean, there are teenage boys around, and these are like targets for junior high school kids to at least put their name on it. It wasn't tagged. I looked at it. I just thought to myself, if they're going to send it around, they should put a relief factor bag on the top of it. It's moving so slow, you could get the relief factor out of the bag, and then you could call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. That Implacable Hill is never easy, but at least it was amusing today. It might be there if I go back up tomorrow. I'm not supposed to. I'm having breakfast with my buddy Gary tomorrow, so I don't think I'm going back up that hill tomorrow, but I'll be up on Saturday. And when I go up again, it might still be there. It's moving so slow that maybe it needs relief factor, a kind of mechanical relief factor. If you want relief factor, the starter pack is 3 weeks. You call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. or you simply head over to their website and look for the starter pack. $19.95, less than $1 a day. Really does do wonders for as you get older, as you go farther in your exercise, you do stuff you're not used to. Relief Factor will make it all the much better at relieffactor.com. I will be returning later in the program to the topic of the looming battle with Iran, but there's some domestic news going on as well, and for that I have Sarah Bedford with me. She is the investigations editor at the D.C. Examiner, Washington Examiner. You can follow her on X at Sarah C. Bedford. Hello, Sarah. How are you in very, very cold Beltway land?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, still pretty cold here.
Yeah, no, I'm going back on Sunday, and I'm hoping it will warm up a little bit before then, because going from California to the Beltway is going to be quite the trip. Sarah, the leader was on with me yesterday, Lear Thune, and he said the Democrats have not yet made their demands on the DHS appropriations bill. Has anything changed in 24 hours? Have they laid out what they want yet?
Yes, Democrats have since laid out 10 demands that they have for the DHS funding bill. And to be honest, most of them are non-starters with Republicans. One of them, sort of as expected, was to require ICE agents, CBP agents to get a judicial warrant before they go to someone's home. That would effectively end the way that immigration enforcement is conducted now, with an administrative warrant through administrative courts. It's a totally different type of law enforcement. And to bring that in line with the criminal justice system would grind enforcement to a halt. So that's one that's totally a non-starter with Republicans. Another one is to end the Trump DHS's policies on sensitive locations. The Trump administration said, ICE, you can go to places like polling areas, polling places, schools, churches. That way, illegal immigrants who know that the law enforcement is coming for them can't hide out in those locations and know that they're untouchable. If you take away the ability for ICE to go to someone's house or their school or their workplace or a polling place, where is ICE supposed to arrest people? And on top of that, it ends what Democrats call racial profiling, which is going to places where illegal immigrants tend to congregate, such as outside Home Depots. ICE wouldn't even be allowed to do that. So if the Republicans were to concede to these Democratic demands, it would effectively end immigration enforcement altogether, and that's why they're non-starters.
Are there any demands that they made that Republicans appear to consider reasonable?
Republicans have shown a willingness to consider requiring body cameras for agents, and the Trump DHS has already said this is something they want to do. They're rolling it out in Minneapolis. They're willing to roll this out nationwide if the appropriations are there to get cameras for everyone, because a lot of the agents say that the body camera footage would end up validating their version of events. The agents themselves don't seem to be that opposed to getting body cameras. In fact, Tom Homan, who's in charge of the situation in Minneapolis now, said what he heard from the rank and file was that they wanted to have body cameras. So that's one that the Republicans could concede to the Democrats on Capitol Hill.
Did the list include regularization of the Dreamers, the 3 million people who came into the United States as a minor, not brought by their own free will, but who were brought here by other people?
That's certainly something Democrats want, but it wasn't part of the appropriations package. That would be really difficult to do through appropriations. But certainly amnesty for whole swaths of people is something that Democrats would want to do policy-wise if they had control of government.
You know, I'm going to differ with you, Sarah. I believe the appropriations process is amendable in regular order, provided that you get over 60 votes in the Senate. So if they really cared about the Dreamers and coupled it with, I wrote about this at Fox News today, coupled it with a sanctuary city funding cutoff for the Republicans, they could get the Dreamers regularized. They've been talking about it for 20 years. Why not ask for it?
Well, it's a great question. And a lot of their demands had to do with sort of defanging ICE and CBP. Other things that the Democrats wanted is to prevent ICE agents from ever being able to wear masks. And not only that, but having to wear IDs visible on their uniforms at all times with a serial number that these ICE observers would be able to take down badge numbers and make individualized reports. But you do have DHS saying that threats against these agents are up something like 1,000%. I mean, they're getting an insane number of threats against these agents. And so that's why the administration argues they need to protect these people's identities.
So this is basically a dead on arrival list of demands and no room to negotiate, nothing to talk about. That means DHS won't be funded. What's the schedule call for shutdown?
They have until February 13th, so next week, to get this done. The one thing Republicans have going for them is that DHS, it's not just ICE and CBP. You have FEMA in there, you have TSA in there, things that Democrats know they can't let go without funding. And the One Big Beautiful Bill Act already gave ICE millions, billions of dollars through 2029 to conduct a surge in deportation. So allowing another shutdown for DHS wouldn't defund the stuff that Democrats hate. And because you do have FEMA and TSA in there, Democrats will also feel pressure to reach some kind of funding deal.
And last question, Sarah C. Bedford. Have they named their negotiating team? Do we know who's doing the actual cut and paste of any deal on DHS appropriations?
Well, you have the leadership in both parties. You have Hakeem Jeffries, you have Chuck Schumer, Thune out there right now being the public face of negotiations. In terms of the rank and file, you've had at least the appropriators be more willing to play ball with each other, Susan Collins in the Senate, for example, and others. So, but right now, because this is the ball game for Democrats, you have leadership being the public face of the negotiations.
And okay, I'm going to shift topic on you quickly because that's not going anywhere. And unless they sing a new tune, there's going to be a shutdown and they're going to end up being embarrassed like they were last year. Is there any concern in the Congress about the looming battle with Iran that you've picked up?
Republicans are so far, for the most part, backing Donald Trump and acknowledging, of course he has the authority to do any sort of limited, immediate strikes. But if you're talking about a sustained military action, you do have some Republicans saying if it's going to be a sustained situation, whether boots on the ground or a bombardment or anything, then we're going to want Trump to come talk to us. So Republicans are just sort of cautiously waiting to see what Trump is going to do.
Sarah C. Bedford from the Washington Examiner. Always good to talk to you. Thank you, Sarah. Follow her at X at sarahcbedford.com. Not .com, Sarah C. Bedford on X. I want to go now to the president who was at the prayer breakfast this morning and begin there with what he had to say, cut number 9.
And believe it or not, we're bringing the country together. You know what's bringing it together? Tremendous success. We're having tremendous success.
That success does, the growth in the economy is going to actually improve Republican chances by default. Looks very strong. Cut number 10, though, he made a joke that got everyone laughing. Cut number 10.
And last time I came, I got in at 4 a.m. They said, "Sir, you're going to be speaking at 7." I said, "Really? Oh, that's wonderful." I said, "Where?" "National Prayer Breakfast." I said, "I'll be there. I'm afraid not to be. I need all the help I can get."
Now, he continued, cut number 11.
Last time I was having a lot of fun. We had a big crowd. We had 60,000 people, and I'm talking about the fact that I will never make it to heaven. I will never, ever. And I was being funny. I was trying to be, you can't be sarcastic with them because they write your words, and they don't. The people who are reading the words are much different than. But I say, I'm never going to make it to heaven. I just don't think I qualify. I don't think there's a thing I can do, but all of these good things I'm doing, including for religion, religion's back now hotter than ever before. I mean, I have to tell you. But I said, even though I did that and so many other things, I named things, I said, I won't qualify. I'm not going to make it to heaven. And the New York Times did a front page story that Donald Trump is questioning his life and the meaning of his life. No, I was just having fun. I really think I probably should make it. I mean, I'm not a perfect candidate, but I did a hell of a lot of good for perfect people. That's for sure.
That's actually not very good doctrine, but good enough is, I believe salvation is like dominoes and horseshoes. You just got to be close enough. Cut number 15, talking about his energy level.
You can go and sleep. We have quarters prepared for you. I said, no, I don't have to sleep. I've been on a plane sleeping for 20, I'm sleeping the plane. I don't sleep on planes. I don't like sleeping on planes, I like looking out the window watching for missiles and enemies, actually. But he said...
Pretty funny, given the tensions. Then cut number 16, last before the break.
Up. Right? And at some point, I'm going to get right back onto the teleprompter, and you're going to say, that was a wonderful speech. On that momentous day in 1776. This is so much easier. You know, it takes real talent to do the other. The other is much more talent, but that's why we're president, I think. But we have very important words to say, and this is such an important group.
He's talking about reading the prompter. By the way, he's right. It's much more difficult to do impromptu than to read a prompter. Joined by Jonathan Williams, president of the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, ALEC.org/Hugh. If you want to sign up for the ALEC newsletter, Jonathan joins me a couple of times a month to talk about what's going on in the states. Jonathan, I'm going to start at with the SAVE Act because it's on everybody's mind. I got criticized yesterday. I didn't ask John Thune about it because I know what the leader said, which is he'll vote for it when it comes up. What do you think about the SAVE Act? I don't think it's got 60 votes.
Well, regardless of the vote counting here in Washington, I think it's got the broad backing of the American people, which is the important thing. I mean, a lot of times we're here talking about common sense ALEC policy ideas. I mean, this has to be right up there with the 90% issue to say that citizens only should be the ones that are voting. And we need to have valid voter ID, just as the states are working on. This is a really important item. Now, if that's the plank that some of the progressive Democrats in the Senate want to walk in an election year, I think that's up to them. But I mean, the American people are pretty strongly in favor of something as common sense as this.
ALEC has for a long time had the only citizens vote model policy. How many states have adopted that, Jonathan?
Well, we're in a number of states this year. We just adopted it this last year as a model policy. So we're in the infancy of it, but we're seeing tons of states introduce it. We've had our task force director of our new process and procedures task force out testifying on the policy. Kansas has been a real leader in this area. And so be on the lookout because I think you're going to see a lot of states get across the finish line this session.
I would actually prefer it be done at the state level because then there is no constitutional issue about whether or not the SAVE Act works when it's mandated by Congress without a spending clause attached to it. So I hope states follow your lead on the Model Act. Let's go to the census next, Jonathan. What is this new census data telling us about 2030 and the reapportionment?
Well, when you look at the political side of it, really bad news if you're in California, right? I mean, they're doubling down on just silly economic policies with this wealth tax and making things even worse. But if current trends continue, California is going to lose potentially 4 or more U.S. House districts in the reapportionment of 2030. And keep in mind, California has been a state, as you know, since 1850. And every single decade, they gained multiple seats in many of those decades. They only lost their very first seat in state history in the last reapportionment in 2020. So for conservatives out there that don't want another Nancy Pelosi in Congress, that's probably very good news. But it's once again reiterating the point that we make every single year here in rich states, poor states, which is Americans continue to vote with their feet away from states like California with the high taxes and big government policies.
I'm afraid they're going to start leaving Virginia. John, I'm a Virginian, you're a Virginian. Even though I'm in California for a few weeks and I teach here every other year, I'm a Virginian. And I know that Spanberger was not my choice, but Governor Spanberger ran as a moderate. Is she governing as a moderate?
Well, the legislature is still certainly not governing as a moderate with all the different bills being introduced on whether it's the tax increases, bringing back a death tax, as we've talked about, the regional greenhouse gas initiative, and those things are not making it to her desk in many cases yet. So the jury's still out. We'll see what she does with some of these. I mean, during the campaign, for instance, a massive issue for job creation in Virginia is the right to work status, right? Or you're going to have a forced union workforce. This is something that she said she would not sign during the campaign. We'll see if she actually follows that. And as you know, Hugh, governors are going to a lot of times let laws become law without their signature. So there's a way to weasel out of that, I suppose. But it's a good point that she did campaign as a moderate against Winsome Sears. And based on what's happening with her party there in the Virginia General Assembly, she's going to be put to that test awfully soon.
Jonathan, do you think that they are more likely to make big mistakes in Virginia because they feel that it's not as mobile a population as California? California's population is very mobile. And the people who made incomes left, and now the billionaires are leaving, and capital is mobile. But if you're working for the federal government and you're in the northern suburbs of Virginia, you got to stay there. Are they indifferent to those people?
Well, there is that argument to say, where are you going to go, Maryland or DC? And it could be arguably worse. Although some of the proposals you see out of Richmond right now would make Virginia the high tax state in the region. So you could see a reversal of the folks that have left Maryland and DC over the years to escape to the freedom loving side of the Potomac, as we used to call it in Virginia. You could see a reversal of that. But keep in mind, I was just with Governor Patrick Morrisey this week in Charleston, West Virginia, and you had Virginia losing population, Glenn Youngkin trying to address that. West Virginia had lost population uninterrupted for 100 years. And this most recent batch of census data showed that West Virginia actually gained 6,000 residents on net from the other states. And so Harpers Ferry, just west of the Metro DC area here in Jefferson County, West Virginia, I think it's a great bet if you're a real estate investor in Jefferson County right now, because I think that's going to become the low-cost, limited government area for people that still want to commute to the DC Metro.
Well, you anticipated me. I saved West Virginia for last because I knew you were there in the last week. And I think you're going to see not a few people head for Harper's Ferry and beyond. It's not a bad commute. The general manager of the Salem station in the Beltway lives there and drives in every morning. It's not terrible commutes, like a California commute, actually. So what's going on in West Virginia that's attracting everyone besides the taxes?
Well, and Governor Morrisey wants to continue to cut taxes this session, too, to make that differential with Virginia even bigger. The other big thing is that this coming school year, the Hope Scholarship plan that you've talked to our great board member, Senator Patricia Rucker, who's really the heroine of national school choice movement, as the first universal school choice state with that Hope Scholarship. That becomes truly universal and available to all families this coming school year. Now, there's some efforts from some big government folks in West Virginia that would like to impede its progress and try to weaken it during this legislative session. But thankfully, people like Senator Rucker and Governor Morrisey are standing strong. So you have that combination of school choice, which benefits obviously families and kids, and you have the lower taxes, limited government regulations, and it becomes a really unescapable value creation to live on the West Virginia side of the line versus the Virginia side of the line. You have access to Dulles Airport, and especially for those commuters, as we were talking about, Hugh, that maybe only need to come to DC 2 or 3 days a week, it becomes a whole lot more manageable. So, I'm a big fan of what's going on in West Virginia, and I think the folks in Richmond ought to pay awfully close attention to that.
Last question, Jonathan. By the way, Senator Rucker is one of our favorite guests at the annual ALEC get-together. She and Danny Perez are a 1-2 punch, the Speaker of the Florida House. But how many people are using the Hope Scholarship? Do you have an actual head count yet of how many people have raised their hand in West Virginia and said, I want that?
It's a really impressive number. I think they've cleared the 10,000 student hurdle here, which is really important as they continue to build progress and it becomes truly universal in this coming school year. I think you're going to see those numbers added to. And you add that to the great new numbers just out of Texas this week, yesterday, that you might have seen reported, where they've already had a couple of tens of thousands of individuals now joining that new education freedom plan that they just opened up.
Yeah, I did not know that, but it's the greatest thing going on in the country is education freedom. And in fact, the incentive that Ted Cruz put into the big, beautiful bill is working all across the United States. I'm sure ALEC is helping it do that. Go to alec.org/Hugh if you want to hear from Jonathan and his colleagues over at the American Legislative Exchange Council about what's going on in the state. And the states are a great sponsor. I love talking to Jonathan, even though he is from Michigan. We still like to talk to him. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for watching the Hugh Hewitt Show. I am on the Salem News Channel right now talking to you. I wish you would tune in and enjoy the show if you have not yet checked out the Salem News Channel. And I'm on all the radio stations you listen to every day coming up, followed by mostly Larry Elder on the Salem Radio Network and on our wonderful affiliates. So don't go away when I go away. I will be on Special Report tonight. Want to pass that along. It was a lousy day on the market again. It's been a bad week for Wall Street. I don't know if it's war worries or not. It doesn't look like war worry. Crude fell today to $63 a barrel, but the Dow Jones was down 1.2%. The S&P was down 1.2%. The NASDAQ was down almost 1.6%. And the Russell 2000, the broadest of all, was down almost 1.8%. The 10-year Treasury ticked up. So it got more expensive overnight to buy a house. If you're in the market for a house, not by much, you're in the sixes wherever you are, and it's not moving anytime soon till the market settles and until the first and second quarter economic data comes in and the Feds feel like inflation is tamed and they can begin to cut the rates. When you do cut, if you buy your mortgage from andrewandtodd.com, and they are the lender, right? andrewandtodd.com are with Union Home Mortgage. 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. They work across the country. Union Home Mortgage is fabulous. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are terrific. They did my loan when the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I left California 10 years ago and moved back to Washington, D.C., and they did Dwayne's loan. They've done loans for everyone in Salem. They've done taking care of thousands of my listeners, thousands of you. Never had one complaint. 888-888-1172. The reason is they're not trying to upsell you. They're not trying to get you into a wacky-dacky thing. They usually just do the vanilla 30-year fix. They try and get you the lowest necessary. But if you need a reverse mortgage because you're a senior citizen, 62 years and older, and living in your primary residence, you want to get money out of your house, never make another mortgage payment, andrewandtodd.com. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, andrewandtodd.com. If you're a first-time home buyer, and I cannot stress this enough, if you're a first-time home buyer, call them up, 888-888-1172. They will find you a realtor. They will find you, if you're going to take money out of your house, they'll find you an investment advisor. You know, they got realtors all over the country like Gordon Wood inside the Beltway who worked with me and has worked with my whole family. Gordon is fabulous. But no matter where you're going, there's good realtors and bad realtors, and andrewandtodd.com. Know the good ones wherever you want to go. 888-888-1172. They'll even help you fix your credit if it's messed up. And if you need to refinance, no better place to go if you want to even everything out. Do want to remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. There it is. I went up the hill today. And I told you about it in the last hour, and I'm going to run the pictures again, but I want to remind you, Relief Factor works. I got my 5 miles in today, up the Implacable Hill and down the Implacable Hill, then back up the Implacable Hill and down. That's the Implacable Hill from about halfway down one side, and I spotted on it ahead of me an unusual object, not another trundler, but in fact, it looked like, indeed, it turned out to be, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, a robot moving at a ridiculously low speed. It was a very confused little robot. I think it might have thought I was going to assault it or something because it kind of went left and right as I got close to it. I was going fast enough to beat the robot. That's not always a given. Someday that robot's going to be faster. But I got up the Implacable Hill and down the Implacable Hill, and I did that because of Relief Factor. I take it every day. It helps your body's anti-inflammatory system get rid of the minor aches and pains that come with going up the Implacable Hill and down the Implacable Hill, whatever your exercise is. Whether you're a swimmer or a gym rat, whether you're one of those crazy people I saw out on the bay, out on Newport Bay last week. I went out with a friend on their boat, and there were the crazy skull people, right? The crew. Those people are nuts. That's hard work. And they were out there in the single sculls, and they were out there in the groups, and I'm just thinking about that's harder than anything I ever done. But if you're one of those, Relief Factor is for you. I know you hurt after every workout, but if you're one of those people, even if you're just playing old man or old woman basketball, and I think that's a bad choice for anyone with Achilles tendons left, nevertheless, if you make that choice and you get knocked down and you're feeling bruised up, Relief Factor is for you. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Bad back, sore neck, bad knees, whatever it is, just exercise. ReliefFactor.com. Coming up after the break, Josh Kraushaar is going to join me on the Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network, and our affiliates because Jewish Insider is staying abreast of what's going on inside of Israel. Dr. Oren gave us a very sober assessment of the risks being run by the American military if, in fact, we go to battle with the Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't think there's actually much question that we are going to do that. I believe it would be a terrible walkback for Donald Trump and very, very detrimental to American credibility. And the fact that they murdered 30,000 of their own people alone would be a reason for the West to act in concert. But our Arab allies are worried, and they're trying to talk us out of it. But those, I just don't see how. Given a statement made by the IRGC today, they're never giving up their missiles. If they don't give up their missiles, they're a threat to the United States at any time. I'm joined by Josh Kraushaar. He is the editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider. Josh, welcome. I want to read to you a report from Open Source Intel that came out about 50 minutes ago. Islamic Revolutionary Guard General Yadullah Havani told Al Mayadeen, first, unveiling the Khorramshahr 4 missile was a direct message to the United States. 2, Iran will not trade away its military capabilities at the negotiating table. 3, the U.S. returned to talks in a weakened and humiliated position. And 4, the general says U.S. power in the region is weakened. What is that message?
I think it's a combination of a lot of bluster and a lot of intransigence, and anyone expecting a breakthrough to come out of the talks between the United States and Iran, scheduled this Friday, scheduled tomorrow in Oman, I think is very optimistic. They're definitely going through the motions, but there's been no sign publicly or privately from the Iranians that they're willing to make the concessions, even the basic concessions about their nuclear program that the Trump administration has demanded. And it looks like, the Iranians seem to be trying to buy some time and trying to perhaps delay the inevitable, or perhaps try to buy time to, delay indefinitely. But we'll see. I think the Trump administration is pretty committed to going through with military action if they don't get any buy-in from the Iranians on any kind of diplomacy.
Josh, I talked to Ambassador Oren at the beginning of the program. He laid out a potentially very dire set of reactions to a battle with Iran, including strikes on our bases and perhaps on our carriers, that the Iranians are pretty good at targeting their missiles. What do you think is the risk level that the American people are aware of?
Well, I think Michael Oren laid it out pretty directly. You look at the public Hugh in Israel, and as opposed to last year with the war against the strong in Israel to decimate the Iranian nuclear program, the public opinion in Israel is a lot more mixed. In fact, there was just a very respected survey that came out this week showing 50-50 in Israel between folks who want Israel to, essentially be publicly behind any U.S. military strike, and another half predominantly from the opposition side of it, that are much more wary about the consequences. And make no mistake that if the U.S. does engage and does strike Iran militarily, Israel is probably going to be the brunt of the consequences.
Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the Knesset today, and it is reported that he said there is a buildup of conditions toward a critical mass that could bring about the downfall of the Iranian regime. I don't know if that's correct. Have you ever read Empire of Terror by Mark Zelinsky, Josh? It's about the IRGC.
I have not. Yeah.
Well, the IRGC is 150,000 strong. They are a very small portion of the 92 million Iranians, but they run everything, and they're so deeply encrusted on the regime. I don't think regime change is a question of killing the Ayatollah. I think it's a question of killing most of the IRGC. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of, from Israel to the Gulf states, there's not an expectation that even if, Khomeini disappeared or, was killed, that there would be an automatic transition to a democracy or a much more humane government. That the IRGC in Iranian life, and they have, they would become natural inheritors. So there's that. Certainly, the Gulf states are very, and in fact, I think part of the U.S. delay is that they're getting a lot of pushback, I would imagine, from the Gulf state allies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, the allies in the region are very wary about what could happen if there is a long term or a days of military engagement against Iran. And Iran, we've seen what they do and what kind of damage they can cause in the region.
Our friend Noah Rothman posted pictures over at his X account, Noah C. Rothman, of our base in Qatar 2 weeks ago and today. And the difference is Patriot air defense batteries have been deployed. I also saw online the account of the traffic of the big C-17s that can carry the THAAD systems anywhere in the world. They were up and flying again last night. It's clear that every air defense asset that we've got is deploying to our bases in the region, because we remember the Iranians hit al-Assad base on the nose when they wanted to after Soleimani was killed. So they can hit our bases. Do you think the American public is aware of actually the cost that this could bring with it?
Well, yeah, they have. I mean, you just laid it out, Hugh. Both in Iraq and in Qatar, they've done it, and it hasn't been that long ago. So that memory runs fresh. And look, I think there's been a lot of debate. We've talked about this on the show, Hugh, on whether Trump is actually going to go forward with military strikes. He obviously said he would after Iran slaughtered thousands of its own citizens. But the reality is, like, he wants to negotiate with the Ayatollah, and he gave a notable interview to Megyn Kelly this week, where he was sort of expressing out loud that the president was sort of bewildered that Iran can't even reach the Ayatollah to directly negotiate in the same way he has with other enemies like Vladimir Putin, or in the first term with North Korea's leader. So, I mean, I think there's a frustration. I think Trump would love to do some kind of deal, and that's what's driving a lot of the conversations in the meeting in Oman tomorrow. But ultimately, they have been intransigent, and that's who the Iranian regime is and has always been.
You know, I want to close on that point. There is no negotiating with this regime. They just murdered at least 30,000 of their own people, and some estimates I've seen go twice and high and even higher. What can you expect? I mean, really, just because Barack Obama fell for this doesn't mean all American presidents are obliged to fall for this.
That's right, Hugh. And look, I think there's a little bit of a mixed message in that, yes, these negotiations are about nuclear and about the enrichment, maybe missiles, but that's certainly been the sensible focus. But Trump has said it was about, you know, the slaughter. I mean, the human rights abuses, the slaughter of your own citizens, the support for Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio. It's also about the support for terrorists across the region and the world. This is a revanchist regime that has caused untold around the world, and I think it's important, you know, focus on that big picture. I think Trump sometimes can kind of get into the narrow details of a nuclear negotiation, but it's a lot more than that.
Well, I think he's also pretty good at throwing a lot of dust into everybody's eyes about what is going on and when it's going to happen. He's done it certainly to everyone in the United States. I assume the Iranians are just as confused. Josh Kraushaar, editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Josh. Follow him on X at Josh Kraushaar. And come right back. I'll bring you up to speed on the latest news. More of President Trump from the National Prayer Breakfast earlier today as well. And then next hour, Phil Balboni. As we talk, there's also an unfolding crisis with our friends in Mexico. They can't get a handle on the people who are really running that country, which are the cartels. President Trump was at the National Prayer Breakfast today, cut number 17.
To be a great nation, however, I think, and I may be wrong, but I don't think so, because I've watched a lot and I study a lot. You have to have religion. You have to have it. You have to have faith. You have to have God. And thankfully, as we gather today, there are many signs that religion is coming back, and now it's no longer signs. It's just coming back. It's coming back so strong.
I hope he's right. I'm always skeptical about claims of revival until the data is in, but I hope he's right. I am a Christian. I think most people are listening are believers of one sort or another. I did listen to Bret Stephens' great speech at the 92nd Y today as I went up the Implacable Hill. And he gave it, it's on Dan Senor's Call Me Back, listen to it, about why anti-Semitism is the ancient evil. It's because they believe in one God and one moral code. And Christianity picked that up and expanded on it, and they are not in conflict at all, but that does cause rejection and it does cause envy. And that is a good thing to listen to Dan Senor today, the Call Me Back podcast. I want to tell you about Consumer Cellular, my last sponsor to mention today. Consumer Cellular can be reached at consumercellular.com/Hugh or at 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. You see what I did there? I did what Kamala Harris did not do. We still can't find Kamala HQ in the studio because she gave a little speech today about Kamala HQ, and I can't find it, and she didn't give the address. If you want to call Consumer Cellular at the end of this endorsement, and I think it is a great company, I think they will save you money, call 1-800-411-4454. Don't forget my code is Hugh, H-U-G-H. You can go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, but you still need to remember my code Hugh. Whatever you sign up for, you'll get your second month free when you use that code. But I want you to consider, if you're 50 years and older, especially if you're 50 years and older, calling them today because they'll save you money. So even if you're an unlimited data person, you want unlimited data, I get unlimited data. I'm online all day long. My job. But I want you, if you're anyone that uses unlimited data, go and find their $60 a month, 2 lines, unlimited data. You get 2 lines, unlimited data. Keep your numbers, by the way. Keep your data. It takes about 20 minutes to change a phone over. And then check all of your phone bills. Get your phone bill out before you call, because when you call, you want to be able to compare. They will save you money over Big Cellular because they use the same towers that Big Cellular does, but they can give you a great deal less rate because they're not trying to upsell you. They're not trying to sell you a phone. They're not trying to get you trapped in years-long contract. Go to 1-800-411-4454. Remember, my code is Hugh, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. President Trump was on NBC News last night with Tom Lamas. I want you to hear the greatest hits from that interview. Cut number 1.
Should the supreme leader in Iran be worried right now?
I would say he should be very worried, yeah. He should be. As you know, they're negotiating with us.
I know they are, but the protesters have said, where are the Americans? You promised them we would have their back. Do we still have their back?
Well, we've had their back, and look, that country's a mess right now because of us. We went in, we wiped out their nuclear.
So that's the question. If we wipe them out,
we have peace in the Middle East.
Yeah.
If I didn't take out their nuclear, think of it. If we didn't take out that nuclear, we wouldn't have peace in the Middle East because the Arab countries could have never done that. They were very, very afraid of Iran. They're not afraid of Iran anymore. We wiped out those beautiful B-2 bombers, one's right over there, those beautiful little models. Those beautiful B-2 bombers went in and they hit their target, every single bomb, and obliterated it. And because of that, they were going to have a nuclear weapon within 1 month.
Yeah.
Within 1 month, they were going to have a nuclear weapon. Yeah. That was a big threat that they're not going to have it anymore.
But if we obliterate it, what's the deal about? I mean, if there's no more, are they trying to restart the nuclear program?
Well, I heard that they are, and if they do, and I let them know, if they do, we're going to send them right back and do their job again.
So your understanding is they tried to restart it, and that's why you're threatening force?
They tried to go back to the site. They weren't even able to get near it. There was total obliteration. But they were thinking about starting a new site in a different part of the country. We found out about it. I said, you do that, we're going to do very bad things to you.
That is the beginning of a very interesting interview. Cut number 2.
I just got off the phone with President Xi, and he is amazed at how well the United States is doing. He said
a glitch in our tape.
He's never seen anything like it.
You brought the conversation, Mr. President, so let me ask you, what did you talk about with the leader of China?
About a lot of topics. We talked
What's
about
the most important topic? Is it chips? Is it the wars in Ukraine? What is going on?
I would say the economy, the relationship that we have with China. I'm going to be going there in April. Then he's coming here toward the end of the year.
Coming to the White House?
He's coming to the White House, toward the end of the year. We have a very good relationship. And, it's important that I have a good relationship, and for him that he has a good relationship with me. We have to have a good. These are the 2 most powerful countries in the world, and we have a very good relationship.
You talk about tariffs?
We spoke for an hour.
Does he ask you about the tariffs? Is he saying this is hurting us?
Well, they're paying a lot of tariffs, as you know. China's paying a lot of tariffs. In the past, they didn't. I'm the one that put tariffs on China. I put tariffs on a lot of tariffs, or just so you understand, making our country rich. Our country has taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, really trillions, because the threat of tariffs is getting all of these countries to lose.
To keep going, cut number 3.
Cuba's in big trouble. Humanitarian aid is going to have to be sent there. They're in big trouble.
It's a disaster.
They got their money from Venezuela. They got their oil from Venezuela. They turned the oil into money, et cetera, and there's none of that happening anymore. They're in big trouble. Do
you think that government is still there, though? Do you think that government lasts?
I don't want to say that, but we are talking to Cuba.
You're talking to Cuba.
You know what? Look, we have tens of thousands of people that were forced out there here. They voted for me, 94% Cuban population, previous Cuban population. Now they're Cuban Americans. Maybe they go back. Maybe they want to go back. They're going to have that choice. But for years, they've been talking about this happening. Now it's happening. We are talking to Cuba. We want to open it up to those people that want to visit. Even, I think most people, when they're here, they want to stay here. I hope that's true. I hope we're not going to lose them. But they're going to have options, and they're going to be able to go back, Tom, and see their loved ones, see their family.
Now I want to go to my favorite one of the quote is cut number 4 because the discombobulator comes up. Cut number 4.
You talked about the weapon, the discombobulator. What is that?
Discombobulator. Well, I'm not allowed to talk about it.
But what does it do?
Let me just tell you, you know what it does? None of their equipment works. That's what it does. Everything was.
How does it?
It was my name. I'm very proud of the name. Everything was discombobulated. It was, practically a shot wasn't. They were ready.
Right.
And when we came, they couldn't do anything.
You saw this on the video. You could tell.
Tom, it discombobulated everything.
Nothing worked, even including humans.
Well, let's put it this way.
Out.
We lost no equipment in a very strong, and they're good fighters, great fighters. In a very bad environment, it was a military base, the biggest in South America. Because the house was in a base in in a very, very tough environment, we lost no men and we lost no equipment.
The discombobulator just knocked everything.
Well, it did something.
I love that quote so much. We're going to play it again because the president has a unique ability among the presidents of my lifetime, and there have been a lot, to sort of come up with stuff on the spur. I don't know that he thought about this discombobulator when he used it the first time after Maduro was snatched, but he said we discombobulated it, and people like it. It's not a word that you hear very often, and so the discombobulator, I'm sure they got a half dozen of them over Tehran right now, and they're going to be discombobulated. Cut number 4.
You talked about
again.
the weapon, the discombobulator.
What is discombobulator? Well, I'm not allowed to talk about it.
But what does it do?
Let me just tell you, you know what it does? None of their equipment works. That's what it does. Everything was.
How does it?
It was my name. I'm very proud of the name. Everything was discombobulated. It was, practically a shot wasn't. They were ready.
Right.
And when we came, they couldn't do anything.
You saw this on the video. You could tell.
Tom, it discombobulated everything.
Nothing worked, even including humans.
Well, let's put it this way.
Out.
We lost no equipment in a very strong, and they're good fighters, great fighters. In a very bad environment, it was a military base, the biggest in South America. Because the house was in a base in a very, very tough environment, we lost no men and we lost no equipment.
The discombobulator just knocked everything.
Well, it did something.
It did something. I don't want to be around a discombobulator. I don't think the Salem News Channel or my Salem Radio Network or my affiliates would work if we got discombobulated. So I don't want to be about, but I got to wonder if the Ayatollah is watching that and thinking to himself, is it an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon? And they've been talking about it for years. And our old friend Champagne Frank Gaffney used to worry about an EMP being launched over the United States, just one, because it can melt everything down. And an EMP is not something you ever want to have exploded over your head or anywhere near you. But I have to wonder, was that what it was, to discombobulate everything? He did, however, talk about his successors in the office of the presidency. Cut number 8.
Look, JD is fantastic, and Marco is fantastic.
How are they different? How are they different?
And I do think this. It's a great question. I think that's your most interesting question. Yeah. I would say one is slightly more diplomatic than the other. I think they're both of very high intelligence. I mean, they will do shows. They will do Joe Rogan as opposed to the opponent not doing it because they couldn't handle it. They will be able to do whatever they have to do. I think there's a difference in style. You can see the style yourself, but they're both very capable. I do think the combination of JD and Marco would be very hard to be beaten, I think. But you never know in politics, right? They say, in the age of Trump, you never know.
The opponent, by the way, reappeared today. The opponent is former Vice President Kamala Harris, who gave absolutely the worst release of a website or an X account or a TikTok. Give a listen to cut number 24.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it. So stay engaged, and I'll see you out there. Thank you.
All right, so I really can't get over this because I do a lot of selling. I know how to sell. I know how to sell a website. And you have to lay it out at least 3 times. Frank Luntz's rule, if you don't say the name of a book title 7 times in the course of any segment on radio or television, you're not selling any books. People can't remember the title. So the vice president, the stage question, Madam Vice President, and he said, oh, I'm very glad you asked. It's so awkward, all right? She's still awkward. But the worst part about it is, from a professional standpoint, is that she doesn't give a web address, and we can't find it. Okay, play it again. Listen.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked.
Can we just say, how cringe is that? Madam Vice President, what's going on? Go ahead, play it again.
I have good news.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great courageous leaders.
I think she got hit by the discombobulator. That's what I think. I think that she was going to give the announcement, and the discombobulator went off somewhere near her because she did not nail the dismount, which is go to whatever it is she wants us to go to. I don't know.
For Benson, we have seen the Iranian leadership wiring money out of the country like crazy. So the rats are leaving the ship, and that is a good sign that they know the end may be near.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on what the Mullahocracy is doing right now. I'm joined by Noah Rothman, senior writer at National Review. Noah, I just talked to Ambassador Oren, who believes the Iranians attempted to bait the United States into striking too soon yesterday or this week with the attack on the Lincoln by the drone and the attempt to seize the oil ship. They took 2 cargo ships today or 2 freighters today. What do you think? What's your assessment of what's going on over there?
So that was a very interesting interview with Ambassador Oren. I hope your listeners caught it. If they didn't, they should catch up with it. He painted a pretty dire situation, a very dire scenario. And it concerns me. It's the worst case scenario, and we've talked about it previously. The notion that the Iranian military or the IRGC will throw everything they can at U.S. assets, particularly naval assets, but also its bases and its partner bases around the region. And it would be a significant challenge. They would attempt to, in my view, engineer a sinking of a U.S. warship. But that would require a lot of assets. Now, here's the other scenario, that the ambassador did not bring up. It is that situation, that scenario where Iran loses all its munitions, all its ordnance, sacrifices future deterrent capability. This is a regime that is hyper-focused on survival. It has a long time horizon. It is not necessarily going to sacrifice all its missiles, all its drones in a one-off strike, because it won't have them to deter future aggression against future adversaries. We can anticipate that a U.S. operation will begin with, as Ambassador Oren said, the striking of missile launch facilities and production facilities. So Iran can be certain that its capabilities will be damaged for the foreseeable future. It will take a long time to spin up those production facilities. So what it's got is what it's got. And if it uses them, it won't have them in the future. A deterrent capability is something this regime would like to preserve. So we can't rule out the prospect of a calibrated response akin to what it marshaled after the operation that destroyed its nuclear facilities in June.
You know, Noah, the Iranians demonstrated in 2020 when President Trump ordered Soleimani to be killed that they can hit a United States base. They hit al-Assad with an array of ballistic missiles. And so if there's a GPS attached, we know they can hit it because they hit al-Assad. They injured a few American soldiers that were left on the base, but we had warning of it and we evacuated beforehand. What would be the response if they actually did a serious casualty figure on America, much less taking out a carrier, which is 5,000 people, which is the nightmare scenario? What do you think the response from America would be?
Well, the nightmare scenario that you just discussed would require a very significant response, a response that would involve bases in the United States sending B-2s with MOPS and 5,000-pound bombs to attack regime targets, to attack military targets, as well as IRGC targets. We would make an example of the Iranian nation. That is not because we would want to communicate to our adversaries in Beijing and Moscow what happens if you attack a carrier, not because of Iran. That is the worst case scenario. That's almost inconceivably bad for American prestige and American deterrent capabilities. But a smaller response is possible to think about, and the notion that the United States will not experience casualties or fatalities in that response is not something you can rule out. And how would the Trump administration respond? I think that depends on how the American public responds. Would the American public regard this as an operation of choice, not of military necessity, and therefore something we invited on ourselves? Or do they think it's an absolute imperative to get rid of this regime by whatever means are necessary, and whatever comes after it is a good problem to have? I hope the American public would respond with the latter assumption, but the president needs to make this case to the nation. The president needs to enlist the public in this project, because it is a national project, and the sooner he comes before the public and says why we're doing this, the better.
I agree with that, by the way, because the first part of that case is to announce how many people we think they murdered. I think it's over 30,000. That hasn't sunk in, Noah. And I don't know that the American people have their arms around that yet, that this regime is capable of murdering 30,000 or more of its own citizens in 48 hours. And that therefore, if they ever got a nuclear weapon or a ICBM that could hit the United States with a dirty bomb or whatever, they would do it. There's just nothing they wouldn't do.
Absolutely. And that is so crucial to say, the scale of the bloodshed, because it communicates to the public how this regime views its own survival. It compelled its own security forces to sign their death warrants with the execution of their neighbors in the streets in January. This regime regards survival, its own survival, their personal survival, as an imperative, and nothing else compares, including the survival of the citizens to which it is ostensibly dedicated. There's nothing that it wouldn't do in order to preserve its own stability, its own existence. And that does mean attacking the United States with whatever weapons it has available, attacking the United States on its own soil, engineering assassination campaigns on American soil, killing Americans by scores. That is what this regime does, and it will not shy away from doing that. And if it has no legitimacy at home, it has no mechanism to rein it in. There's no domestic trigger that the Iranian people can pull to impose some circumspection on this regime. It is moderated and guided purely by the Islamic Republic's supreme leader's own sense of morality. And we've not seen very much of that. It is really a force that is untethered to anything beyond what this very cloistered group of clerics is telling themselves. It's a very dangerous regime.
It's a 12th Imam end times regime, and I would encourage anyone to read deep on this. Noah, you did post on your X account a picture of our base in Qatar that shows the deployment of Patriot missiles over the last 3 weeks. I think that explains why President Trump hasn't moved yet. And the dispatch of the George H.W. Bush carrier tells me the same, that tomorrow's meeting may or may not produce a second meeting, but I don't think it matters in the end. Do you share my fatalism about this?
Oh, I do. Yeah, we gave a little bit, and I kind of wish we hadn't, but I understand why, the idea being to keep the Arab states on board with the diplomatic track. But we're too far apart. We are talking about the nuclear program, which is under several tons of lightly irradiated rubble. It's not really worth talking about. But we are also talking about the ballistic missile program and their proxy terrorist groups. The problem is that we want those things to go away forever, and the regime wants them to exist forever because they regard them as essential to their own survival. So we're just too far apart to meet in the middle. But Ambassador Oren's point is extremely important, that the Arab states are not democracies. They do not necessarily want to see this regime fall from popular pressure. This is not like the Arab Spring. We're talking about some conditions that are sui generis, very unique to Iran. So they have a little bit less to be worried about in Riyadh, although they should be worried about their own people. But it is important for us to be able to communicate and convey that what we want to see happen to the Islamic Republic is an implosion, not an explosion. And that will require sustained U.S. power and presence in the region for the foreseeable future, and a soft landing space for this regime, elements of it that are willing to either exile themselves or to work with a successor government, because we do not want to see the collapse of this regime into civil war and chaos and disunion, because our partners abroad do not want to see that. That might be distasteful, but it's realpolitik that we will have to consider.
Well said, as always, Noah C. Rothman. Follow him on X from National Review, Noah C. Rothman. Open source intel reporting at this hour that U.S. airlift activity for the Iran operation has hit at least 102 C-17 and C-5 flights into CENTCOM as of February 5. That includes 58 arrivals at our airbase in Jordan, 13 arrivals at our airbase in Qatar, 12 arrivals at our airbase in Saudi Arabia, 9 arrivals at Diego Garcia, which is a British Indian Ocean territory, which does have quite a lot of our stuff there. I didn't think that the Iranians had a missile capable of getting to Diego Garcia, but no chances being taken there. Kuwait, 7 arrivals. Bahrain, 3 arrivals. I'm sort of thinking that's low. And pending flights, 12. I would guess they're going to go to Bahrain. So that is a buildup without precedent, I think bigger than the one before Midnight Hammer by a lot. And Prime Minister Netanyahu warned his Knesset today that the conditions for the collapse of the regime are mounting. And I do think that is a partial explanation for the schizophrenic activity coming out of Iran. Some members of the regime, senior military members, senior spokespeople, are attempting to intimidate the United States via their statements and their showing of pictures of missiles and stuff like that, pronouncements that are poking the bear, and then actions by Iran to actually poke the bear, like attacking the Abraham Lincoln with a drone. They could do drone swarms. They could put up a lot of drones, but the Lincoln can move. And I'm not sure their drones are that good, but all of our ships will not be sitting around waiting for a drone to find it. The air bases can't move, which is why the THAAD theater altitude deployment system and the Patriot missiles are being deployed to our stationary bases. They have a GPS. Very, very likely that America will be hit hard, not continental United States, but our bases and our people at sea and on land in the region if this begins. And I think it's going to begin because I don't believe the Iranians are going to give up anything that they have to capitulate, basically. If they give up what they has been demanded of them, they will have to capitulate. I am afraid that the special envoy is invested in envoying, but Mr. Witkoff has pulled off a lot thus far this year, so hopefully he will continue to do so. We'll talk with Jim Talent after the break. I want to remind you for the last time in the Relief Factor studio, went up the Implacable Hill today, found there a robot at the top. It was really kind of amazing. It didn't slow me down. I kept going past it and then back up to it. I just couldn't believe it was there in the middle of nowhere, because the Implacable Hill is just a bike path and a dirt trail, and it goes on forever, but so did R2D240. It was moving at a half mile an hour. I don't even think it was moving at a half mile an hour. It was slower than I was, which is pretty slow, and it was going up the hill and down the hill. And I also found it amazing that it had been unmolested by junior high school boys. And I'm not used to it yet. They're everywhere. I am used to Relief Factor. I want you to get used to Relief Factor. I want you to take it every day, the 3-week starter pack that can get you up an Implacable Hill in your own neighborhood or down one or go to the beach or go out whenever it warms up in the east. Relief Factor can be found at 1-800-4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or go to their website. You can find the starter pack there as well. $19.95, less than $1 a day, relieffactor.com. Get yourself out and moving. It's the greatest thing in the world to do it, even if you're going to find robots on your bike path. relieffactor.com. Donald Trump at the prayer breakfast today, cut number 20.
Under the Trump administration, we're standing strongly behind Americans of faith, stopping the attacks on our values, our traditions, defending religious liberty.
Cut number 22.
The Department of Justice recently charged 9 individuals for storming a church in Minnesota during a worship service and trampling on Americans' First Amendment rights. I watched that tape, and that was violent. I saw the people sitting there, Pam, and they were scared. Some were scared and some were holding up their hands like, I believe in God. but they were violent people, screaming, "Your parents are Nazis. Your parents are Nazis." The people are sitting, and I thought the minister was great. He was so calm and good. They're screaming at him, terrible, right in the middle of a church service. It's got to be illegal. I mean, Pam is doing it. I'm not doing it, but Pam is doing it. And I'll tell you, people are happy with the job that's taking place because they're bad people. They're bad people. You have one Trump hater in particular that just, I watched his performance. It was terrible. They try and use freedom of the press and all this to get out of a criminal event. But they were, that was a horrible thing to witness. And if we allowed that to go on, you wouldn't be able to have a church. No, everybody would be afraid to go to church.
He is not wrong about that. Joined by former United States Senator Jim Talent, who's on the Reagan Institute Center for Security. Senator Talent, your assessment of what's going on with Iran.
I think the odds that we're going to strike are very, very high. You've been talking all day about the three things that we want: no nukes, no support for the proxies, and no ballistic missiles. Well, the nuke program is pretty much gone. Their economy's collapsed. I can't imagine they're sending much money to Hezbollah, but they still have a substantial ballistic missile arsenal. So the big win for the administration is if we get some kind of regime realignment or recalibration, if somebody wearing a military cap takes over from Khomeini and decides to play ball with us. But if they don't, we're going to go after the ballistic missiles directly. That's what I think is going to happen. And, the issue is when. Your guess is as good as mine. They're certainly getting ready now.
Now, Senator Talent, at the Reagan Institute Center for Peace Through Strength, it believes in muscular foreign policy, but we haven't seen a buildup like this since the invasion of Iraq. And two carrier groups, all of these THAADs and Patriots, no boots on the ground planned, and not that we know of, and certainly doesn't look that way. Are you still, nevertheless, worried about American casualties at our bases and on our ships?
You always worry, I remember as a kid listening to your old boss, Dick Nixon, talking about the Vietnam War and how much casualties he had gone down. But he said, one casualty is one too many. So, and we all feel that way. But that's why we have CENTCOM planners, Admiral Cooper. That's why we have the Joint Staff under General Kane. That's why we have the Undersecretary for Policy in the Department of Defense, to prepare, to advise the president whether something like this can be done within an acceptable margin of risk. And I think clearly they've told him that they can do it. And my experience through the years is that when we're in a basically non-competitive environment, in the sense that the air defenses have not proven effective, and we're going up against a non-peer competitor and we have time to build up, we're very good at this. So I have a fairly high confidence level, but of course you're going to worry until it's over, and nobody can guarantee there won't be any losses. I mean, that's just not possible. But these are substantial American security interests that we can gain by this operation. And I think the president's decided he's going to do it if we don't get a diplomatic solution, and I think he's right.
Ambassador Oren has twice in a week reminded me of the British ship, the Sheffield, which was hit by an Exocet missile in the Falklands conflict in 1982. It was a lucky hit, but it killed a lot of British sailors anyway and sunk the ship. What is the threat to the Lincoln or any of the destroyers or support ships, do you think?
Well, it's obviously the anti-ship cruise and ballistic missiles, but we know about that. I mean, those ships have very sophisticated air defense systems. We're going to take out the launchers as quickly as we can. They're going to try and achieve tactical surprise. And with all due respect to our allies, the Brits, our Navy, and they had a much better Navy in 1982, but nowhere near, even relatively speaking, as good as ours now. So this is why all of my former colleagues who want to be president, these are the kind of decisions you got to make. I think it's time to do this. I think the administration is determined to eliminate the Iranian threat, which has been with us for 50 years. It's necessary to do that to achieve our vital national interests in the Middle East. Read the National Security Strategy, page 5. I think the president's determined, and we got the best guys and gals in the world, and if we have to do it, I think we'll be successful.
Now, Britt Hume was my guest yesterday, Jim, and he said, after many years of watching presidents, if a president leans this far forward as President Trump has, if nothing happens, his deterrence is injured. Do you agree with him?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And the president knows that. I mean, that's why he would not have said this as often as he said it if he did not intend to order a strike in the event that the diplomatic channels fail. I'm not quite as down on that as some other people are. I think part of this may be to pressure this regime. Well, there's no question. The president's got leverage because in this case, it's military leverage, and he's increasing the pressure on the regime, which is one reason I think why this is going on for weeks. Imagine what that's like in their bunkers, especially since so many of their people have already been taken out. And I know, again, there's concern about what they might do in response, but I bet anything, we're holding secondary deterrence in reserve. In other words, if they respond and attack Americans, they know we can come back with even more. And what about the Israelis? If they don't go in the first wave, they may go in the second. So, I'd much rather be on our side making these decisions than on the mullah side.
I'm going to talk with you about timing after the break, but can you run through what you would assess the response to an actual hit on a carrier or a destroyer that took a lot of sailors' lives?
Well, we go in with everything then, and that would probably trigger an attack directly on the Iranian economy. You've talked about Khark Island, and I can't pronounce it either, by the way, the way the Iranians do. You've talked about that. I mean, at that point, and again, the president's warned about that, and we've seen how sensitive he's been in the past to taking American casualties. So we'd go in very heavy then. You know the power of an aircraft carrier task force, not to mention the submarines, not to mention the long-range precision strike aircraft we've got, the B-2s. If we have targets that don't have effective anti-air defenses, they're just helpless, Hugh. I mean,
I'm doing my math in my head, and if the Israeli Air Force gets involved, it's 500 bomb-delivering precision munitions every cycle, from the ship to the sea and from the Israeli Air Force Base. It's an incredible amount of firepower.
It will turn, 800 sorties into several thousand sorties. It'd just be absolutely devastating. And so again, they've got to be thinking about that too before they unleash, hundreds of missiles at us.
Senator Talent is still with me because I wanted to talk to him about the window in which he believes a battle with Iran will begin. What's your estimate, Senator Talent? We've lost your microphone, Senator. We got to get you to turn it back on. Not sure what's going on there, but okay, go ahead, Senator. What's your estimate?
Mine is fine. Yeah. Well, let's look at the reasons for the delay. I think there were three. One of them is so we could build up. That's got to be near completion now. You've been tracking the forces that have been coming into the region. The second was diplomatic, because as Dr. Oren said, our allies and partners want all the things we want with Iran, but the Gulf states, in particular, probably MBS, they're nervous about whether a military conflict will destabilize the region. And I think the third reason is the president is letting the regime sweat. I mean, he's seeing that they've been pushed to the edge.
Oh, we lost you there, Jim. And
we don't know.
You're back now.
Yeah.
Well, they're pushed to the edge. That's what we heard you say.
Yeah, they're pushed to the edge, and we're waiting to see if they'll break. I mean, they're the ones who are sweating at this point. Yeah, we're concerned about our servicemen and women, but we've done this kind of thing before. So I think those are the reasons. And I think once we get the force package in place, it could happen at any time. And
do you think the Israelis might beat us to the punch because they have been known to go first before?
Well, to me, the two questions about this, other than timing, and I have little doubt that the administration will seek to engineer a tactical surprise, which they did with Midnight Hammer. They'll do that again. To me, the two questions with this are the Israelis going to join in initially with us? They certainly will if Iran attacks them in response. And then the second is, are we going to attempt to decapitate the highest levels of leadership, Khomeini, the mullahs, the IRG commanders? I mean, a lot of them have already been killed. Are we going to do that, or are we going to hold that back to use for secondary deterrence? Those are tactical questions, as is timing. And unless you're read into these briefings every day, I mean, you just don't know. But I think they'll try and engineer a tactical surprise. It's going to be interesting to see how they try and do it.
Maybe the discombobulator will be deployed.
Yeah.
Jim Talent.
Yeah.
Do you think it's an EMP?
Could be. We have a lot of ways of breaking the kill chain, and the Navy is particularly good at it and always has been. Electronic countermeasures, jamming the radar. I mean, there's all kinds of things. We're good at that, and which is one of the reasons we haven't had the kind of disaster you're talking about. So, again, it's up to the president to decide whether we can do this within an acceptable margin of risk. But I think clearly he has decided. And I would be surprised if that's not a well-founded decision.
Senator Jim Talent, always good to talk to you. Follow him on X America at Jim Talent. I'm going to give you the way to find him at Jim Talent. Unlike Vice President Harris, who didn't tell you how to find her new HQ, and I'm not going to tell you. Good luck. We finally found it, but it's not anywhere where you think it might be. You can find Senator Talent at Jim Talent on X.